Hey guys, today's video is going to be a little different than what I usually do. I try to avoid working on the weed eaters and chainsaws, but I got a real good deal on this Husqvarna. I've been wanting to get one for a long time. This is a 326LS, what this is. It don't run, but if you pour gas through the carburetor, it runs. I got to looking at it, and all the fuel lines are dry rotted on it, and the primer was bad, so I took it off. It's missing the choke lever, so I ordered one for that choke lever, and a new fuel filter, fuel line, and a Red Max trimmer head. This is a PT 104 Red Max trimmer head with the left-hand threads on it. And these are about the most heavy-duty heads I've seen. I'll get into more detail on that later. But the first thing we're going to concentrate on is trying to get it running. I might have to get a new carburetor for it, but if I do, it's about $24 for it. And well, I'm going to see what this one will do first. It's worth a shot. And I got a new primer bulb too for it. The old one's still, the primer button's still good, but acts like the check valves in there ain't working right or something, so I figured just go ahead and get a new one. It didn't cost too much really. And just trying to replace everything I can on it, and just to see what it'll do. I got to change the whole shaft out on it because the end's messed up on it. I'll be able to reuse the shield on here, but it's missing the end here, and I got another type off of 223. I figured it'd be the same thing, but it has a square shaft, so I got to change the whole shaft and everything because the inside shaft is actually a couple inches shorter. So I got to change everything over, and I got everything to do that. But first thing I'm going to do is just get it running first and go from there. And also got an extra one too. They threw it in, so the gear ends usually go out on these. They do have a grease fitting, but nobody ever greases them. So the first thing I'm going to do is get all the plastic off of it that I need to, and so I was even going to get a new air filter for it, but the one that's in here I can probably clean it and reuse it because it stays intact. Usually they dry rot or something, but I'm going to go ahead and get these screws out here and take it apart. Another problem is someone rigged up the spark plug wire one there, as you can see, but I should be able to fix that and re-solder it or solder it and set it up a little bit better than what it is. I couldn't really see buying a new coil just because that end was bad, but if I have to, I will. You don't know what you're getting into once you get started on something like this. But let me get all these screws apart and we'll look at it all apart here. Okay, so here's the carburetor setup on these. One good thing about them, they got both adjustments. You can pop these caps off so you can get full adjustment out of them. And if there ain't no screwdriver head on there or nothing, you can either grind one in there or just use needle nose to turn them. If you don't have the tool for it. I don't have the tool for it myself because, like I said, I try to avoid working on weed eaters and chainsaws because everything's so tight on these and it's kind of hard to work on, really. I like working on riding mower engines and stuff like that better than anything. The only reason I'm taking the carburetor loose is so I can get to the fuel lines better. One of them is still good and I left it intact. I had all this apart the other day just to figure out, get an idea what was wrong with it. Because I knew I kept priming it and it wasn't pumping gas, and I seen all the lines were ripped on it. So I figure that's probably what the problem is. Like I said, you just never know if that carburetor is going to be any good or not. Here's your throttle cable. I'm just unhooking that to get it out of the way. And like I said, I got a new fuel line for it too. See right there's a piece of old fuel line just sitting in there. You can see it's all dry rot. This is one of the better pieces actually, but this black one here is still in good shape, so I'm just going to leave it alone. No sense in replacing it if we don't really need it. I'm pretty sure this is the line that has the filter on it. I got one of these little tools here, which ain't nothing fancy, but it does come in handy for reaching in there grabbing the fuel line like this. Yeah, but there's the existing fuel filter, which it might be good, might not be. I just went ahead and got one. This has probably been sitting for a while, and I actually ran into one the other day when a leaf blower, all this foam came off of it. I ain't never seen that happen before, but just goes to show you never know what you're going to run into when you're working on something like this. But this fuel filter is a little bit different than the one I bought, which ain't really going to matter too much. This is just the standard type, and it ain't going to have that piece of plastic there, but you probably don't need that anyway. And the primer button just snaps in place here like this. Usually when they make that squeaking sound, you know they're working good. Another thing, you notice this is kind of dirty. I still ain't really cleaned it up a whole lot. I might go ahead and do that a little bit before I get too involved with it. It's not real dirty down in there, but the main thing I'm talking about is the shroud and everything. I've tried it. It cleans up pretty good, so it should look like a new one. It's actually an older model one, but still got real good compression and everything. And like I said, when I poured gas into it, it seemed like it wanted to run. So I figure once I get the carburetor issue fixed, it should take off. And these fuel filters are real easy to replace. You see, there's a pretty big difference between these two, but I think it'll be alright. I'm not too worried about it. I'm sure if you bought an actual Husqvarna filter, it's going to be a little more expensive than a generic one. They just slide back on there, and this one has a clamp on there. I'm going to put that clamp back on there since it don't fit real snug. Might end up replacing that fuel line after all. We'll see here in a minute. Okay, so I fed the fuel line into that other hole on the tank here. I'm just going to go ahead and try to get the primer button hooked up. And since the filter is hooked straight into the carburetor, this line hooks into the carburetor here, well, I'm going to assume that the primer bulb pumps the gas through the carburetor and not into the carburetor. So this should be the return line coming out of it. And on this one, see how it's doing? That big one on the bottom is the output of the primer button. So I'm going to hook this line straight into the tank coming off of that. Then the suction line on the primer bulb will hook to the other hookup on the carburetor. That should be right. We'll have to see how it does. So I'll go ahead and cut this and put it on there, and we'll see what it does here after a while. This ain't as hard to work on as some of them, but I still ain't a big fan of working on weed eaters. See right there's that old line on the carburetor here rotted off, so I'm going to have to cut that off there. Okay, so I ran the fuel line into that other fitting on here, and ran into the small one on this, and I'm going to get ready to put some gas in there, and we're going to see what it does. Hopefully it pumps through it. And once you start seeing the gas in the primer bulb, you know it's pumping through it. Now I have hooked these up backwards before, and you can see a little bit of gas in the primer bulb, and you get it running, and it's going to pump that gas out of it. And you know that's not right, because then it'll stop running until you prime it again, and that's not right if it does that. So we'll go ahead and see what it does. And the choke lever just slides on that lever right there. Just slide right on it. That's all you got to do. That was actually a high dollar part too. $6 for a piece of plastic. I call it high dollar. Just $6 for a piece of plastic that you know is going to break in a couple of years. Alright guys, moment of truth. We'll see if it's going to start priming. I see it in the fuel line already. It seems like it's working right so far, but you can't always tell. I'm going to pump it a little extra because if there's any dirt in the carburetor, this will actually help get it out some. I figure that carburetor's probably been sitting a while. It might be gummed up. Might have to take it off and clean it or rebuild it, but I figure I'll just give it a shot and see what it does. You never know. Maybe the gas would run out of it when they run it last time or something. Okay, let's see what it's going to do. Let me move the camera a little bit. Choke it a little bit. That shaft makes some noise there. Pull it out. Well guys, I think we got a winner here. I'm surprised. If somebody was trying really good, I'm surprised me. So I'm going to go ahead and put all this back together and clean up that shielding a little bit, and we'll get the shaft put together, and I guess we'll try it out. Okay, so now I'm going to start changing the shaft over. And you got 2 screws, one on each side, that hold your whole assembly here and attaches to the motor itself. I thought it attached to the shaft, but it don't. And you got 2 screws here that act like a clamp in the old shaft, and hopefully it'll just slide right out and I don't have to take none of this apart. I always get them linkages messed up. And right there it is. It just slid all the way out. Now we can change it over. Alright guys, after about a half hour there, ended up having to cut the original shaft down to get the other type of shaft in there, because the 326 is supposed to have a solid shaft, and I didn't have the right end for this, and this was a high dollar end, so I had to use a 223 end on it. So I had to use a 223 shaft inside the 326 shaft housing, if that makes sense. So this is a flexible shaft in it now. It's not what's supposed to be in there, but I'm going to try it out and see. It should work at least for a while until I can get a new one or something. But now I'm going to get ready to put this head on there. And this is missing. There's supposed to be like a cup on the bottom of this. You'd be able to put a pin through there to lock it up, but it's missing on this. So you just kind of got to take it on backwards because it's a left-hand thread. So all I'm going to do is try to reach in there with a screwdriver or something and catch one of the splines there and just snug a little bit. It'll tighten up on its own anyway. But that's pretty much it. And I'm going to shoot some grease in there. I forgot to show you all what I like about these weed eater heads so well. You press on these little spots here. It pulls up like this. Your spool and everything comes off here. And you can take it off, wind your string, and you just snap your string back in these grommets here. Make sure your spring stays in place. Line up the notches where it goes. And you just press it down, it snaps right in. Just like that. You're good to go. That's what I like about these, because they're so easy and fast to change the string on. And like I said, these Husqvarna heads got a grease fitting on there, and I like to grease them about every other time I use them. Well guys, I guess that's about it. I just tried out in some grass there, and I'm gonna give it a real test after a while and see how it does. So, if you got any questions or comments, leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching.